Ugadi greetings to the 1.5 million Telugu people in the United States of America and those across the world. I'm particularly delighted that I'm called to speak on the Women's Day issue on a day that brings forth new promise, new hope, with old belief systems that have culturally helped us being valued across the globe and which help us build a better and more inclusive future. I normally am not very well positioned to speak about my journey in solitude, and I'm very habituated to a conversation. But instead of just talking about me, let's contextualize what Women's Day is actually all about. In our country, and possibly we are the only nation on the face of this planet, where our war for independence against colonial forces were fought by both men and women. We are possibly the only nation where we saw a mother, a young widow, tie her child to the back, strapped across her body, rode a horse, raised her sword against the British Army, with an army of Indian men following her. That is Lakshmi Bai, which was featured in your opening title montage. We are the only nation on on the planet which civilizationally has the concept of Ardhanarishwar, where Shiv and Shakti come together, and their blessed union is what culturally the fulcrum of our thought process and our beliefs. We are the only country which can proudly say that while man went to the moon, the Mars vision was heralded by women of India. We today proudly say that I can't speak for other democracies across the world. The Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces in India is a lady President Draupadi Murmu. That today we have 1.5 million Indian women who serve in panchayats elected through local elections in governance bodies. That we have the highest number of women now serving in Indian Parliament. We are one of the very few democracies and the largest democracy in the world that has passed 33% reservation for women in Parliament, and that too when the new Parliament building was being inaugurated. What better an inauguration than inviting the force of Lakshmi, Saraswati, and Durga to Parliament, that being the 33% reservation bill that was passed. India has also evidenced what it means to invest in women. If you all remember, in the year 2014, Prime Minister Modi wanted to ensure that no Indian is unbanked, that every Indian has an association and an engagement with financial institutions across the country. And that is why, in less than 3 years, over 500 million Indians under Jan Dhan Yojana could open their bank account. Proudly, I say that 250 million of those were Indian women. And 66% of these bank accounts that were opened were in rural and semi urban India. What transpired was nothing less than a revolution. We all know that the government of India formulated something called a Mudra loan. Mudra was not a gendered instrument. However, 300 million loans were given to women who wanted to start their own enterprise but had no money or no asset that they could leverage as collateral. They, women on this panel, will be extremely proud to hear that women who took loans for SMEs, for basic small businesses, in fact, serviced their credit so much and so well that NPA in women held accounts is less than 2%, whereas NPAs by men has gone over 3.5%. That we've led very strongly, even academically, with the minute Prime Minister Modi ensured that academic credits are transferable across the country. We saw a surge in women who do PhDs, and that number went up by 99%, which means that while women always had an inclination towards academia, they never had the credit facility as they grew in their professions or in their lives domestically to facilitate their academic pursuits. I'm proudly, as an Indian today, happy to tell you that in the G20, when India had the presidency, we are the only country in the history of the G20 that prioritized women, their leadership potential, and their financial prowess. And that is why, under India's leadership and under India's presidency, for the first time in the history of G20, as the former gender minister of India, I can proudly say that the leadership declaration had a mention for the first time of a women's working group so that issues of women and young girls could be brought to that policy table and solutions could be formulated. Today, we have close to 1.9 crores. That means close to 19 million women who serve in Indian bureaucracy across the country. Today, we have not only women who are leading in the financial and the banking sector, who are not only leading in enterprise, who are not only leading in space technology, who are not only healthcare leaders, but I think the Telugu component of our civilization can proudly say that even innovators and those who push the envelope in terms of frugal innovation, many of them come from India and many of them are women. Ironically, it is said that the Women's Day has a very interesting history. It was first proposed to be celebrated by no other than Lenin, who in 1922 said, "Why don't we celebrate women who took part in the 1917 Russian Revolution?" Ironically so, then Europe broke out into activism, and women across Europe then agitated so that they could get an equal right to vote as men in their countries. And somebody in the UN in the 1970s who said, "Why don't we dedicate one day to women?" And when everybody got together, especially the men, they thought, what is the day that Sunday falls on? That Sunday was the 8th of March, and that is how Women's Day came about. Now, for us Indian women, we can proudly say that while many countries, and especially the country that I'm addressing right now, may never have a woman who contributed to writing the Constitution, we in India can proudly say that 15 women helped write our Constitution. And when the Constitution was brought to life, men and women in independent democratic India had equal rights with regards to voting. Today, much has happened in the legislative journey of India. We've had laws which have been brought to the fore, and change has been affected so that women's rights can be protected. But we all know as men and women that no country on the planet has reached the utopian stage yet where we are bereft of crime against women. That is a process that we as citizens globally so are working towards, and I'm hopeful that India can give one of those solutions. It is ironical even yet when India speaks of legislation, we see that legislation for sexual harassment at workplace came in the year 2013, and I was in opposition there, and I spoke about it and spoke of the irony that civilizationally, if you look at Arthashastra, that had punishment for harassing women at work, and we legislated thousands of years later. So much can be said about women and civilizationally, how much women in our country, in terms of rights, in terms of endeavors, have enriched our history. Much can be celebrated today as to how many women now are at the forefront of how many small revolutions in technology, healthcare, and administrative services. I can only hope, as an Indian woman, that we are making a level playing field for girls to follow suit. And also, we are that indicative hope to the rest of the world that don't look at only women's emancipation. As Prime Minister Modi says, it is women led development that will ensure global equity. So, from the land of culture, from the land of Ardhanarishwar, from the land of Lakshmi Bai, happy Women's Month.